What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today it's the Game Week 5 preview. So as always, going through your questions and topics that you've put to me on Twitter. And there's a lot to go through this week, as you might imagine. International break has thrown up injuries, there's positive tests, there's overperformance to talk about, jumping on players early transfer versus late transfers. Lots of this has come up, especially with the international break. So I'm going to go through as many of those topics as I can. The one thing I've changed with this video is I've taken captaincy out of it. It means I can shorten this video a little bit because I sometimes feel like I rush captaincy just to get it in at the end. And it means I can spend a bit more time on captaincy and do it in a separate video, probably on Thursday or Friday. So hopefully you're all right with that. Let me know in the comments below if you think that's a major issue and something I shouldn't do. But for this video, I'm just going through the key talking points. So give it a like if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you're new. And before we jump into the first one, let's talk about Manscaped. So that's right. Before we get into the FPL stuff today, we're talking about a different type of ball game. And I'm really happy to say that Manscape.com are supporting today's Game Week Preview. You might have seen them on other channels such as True Geordie, FPL General. They've been on his podcast as well. And they really do help out content creators like me. So I'm happy to have them on board. They are the best in men's below the waist grooming. And with my code LTFPL, you can get 20% off at manscape.com. They've just launched in the UK, so you can be one of the first people to get a hold of their products and try it out, like the Lawn Mower 3.0. Battery lasts up to 90 minutes. It's waterproof. You can go and use it in the shower. And I'll tell you now, it's a smoother experience than trying to pick your captain for Game Week 5. So if you want to try it out, manscape.com, there is a link in the description below. Just use LTFPL, i.e. Let's Talk FPL, for 20% off. So go and check it out today. So first topic is balancing early and late transfers. So this is a topic that comes up every single season, but it's probably more prevalent to discuss now because of everything that's going on in the world. Obviously, usually we're worried about players maybe getting ill, getting the flu or a cold or whatever it might be, potentially getting injured in training or injured in a midweek match, and that's about it. But now, obviously, with COVID and everything like that, we're seeing players test positive, and if they test positive, are we worried about their teammates? When will they test positive potentially? Will they have to self-isolate? So there is an added worry now for making early transfers. Overall, I don't think a huge amount has changed, right? If you go early, you potentially get some extra team value, but you risk maybe having to take an extra hit along the way. If you go late, you lose some team value, but you have all the info needed. And especially like this week in the international break is quite important. So first things first, is team value important? That will depend on who you speak to. The thing for me, especially early on in the season recently with FPL, like over the international break, there's not a huge amount of price rises, right? You very rarely now see a player go up kind of 0.2 or 0.3, especially early on. Like Son's only just gone up. A lot of that is probably because of wildcards. He might go up to 9.2 before the deadline, but he's not going to rise 0.3 now before Game Week 5. The price rises just aren't as kind of volatile as they used to be. Price drops are pretty brutal for the first 4 games. So if your player doesn't perform, there's so many people making transfers, they're going to drop in price. Che Adams played 4 game weeks. He's only got 1 assist. He's already dropped twice. Luke Shaw's just dropped for me as well. So that's kind of what I'm protecting and making the early transfers. The risk is there, of course. There's a bigger risk now because of COVID and everything like that and players having to self-isolate. But maybe come the end of the season, it's worth taking. The thing is team value that important at the end of the season? That will depend on who you speak to. And a lot of the times, I've said this before, even though I am kind of trying to protect my team value now, I've said it before, most of the time, come the end of the season, right, if you've had a good season, if you've had the right players, you're going to build up team value anyway, right? Like I had Calvert-Lewin and Rodriguez from the start. I built up big team value in them. Not many other players in my team have I gained a huge amount from, yet at least. Hopefully I will if they keep going up. Like Salah's gone up a bit, but that's about it. Come the end of the season, right, let's say you've got 1.52 million less than someone else. That might mean that instead of Son, you have to go to a 7 million midfielder, which does seem like a big thing, but it's just one player difference. Most of the time, you can have the same players in the rest of your team, unless you're someone that builds up a massive team value, right? I see people that make early transfers throughout the whole season. They're constantly looking for that team value, as well as making good transfer decisions as well. And they have a huge amount more. They got like 2, 3 million, 4 million maybe to spend, and you can see it in their teams. Now, whether or not that actually always works out, because at that point, sometimes when you've got a high team value, you don't even bother looking if there's better value options, right? You just go for the players because you can afford them. And obviously, players are priced higher because you'd hope they would get points, but it doesn't always work out like that. So I do think team value is important. I'm not sure it's as important as a lot of people place an emphasis on, but it's important enough that I've made early transfers over the international break. What I probably will try and do going forward is limit the amount of early transfers I do. Like I've spoken a lot about not checking price rise sites, and I don't, to be honest. I did this week because I was thinking about getting rid of Che Adams and Shaw anyway, so I looked to see if they were going to fall in price. They were. I made the moves early. But on another week, if I'm not looking to get rid of any of my players, I won't check to see if they're falling in price. If I don't want to get rid of them, why does it matter if they're going to fall in price? It's like Che Adams, right? I took the first price drop because he had Burnley away and West Brom at home, and I wanted to play him in those fixtures. It didn't work out, but on another day or another week, it might have. So as I go forward, I'll take less and less early transfers, and especially I think now, having seen what's happened this week, over the international break in particular is probably where I'll look, because there'll be another one in 4 weeks' time. And given all the players that are mixing on different teams, like it's a bit different like for maybe Champions League, because it's still all the Chelsea players together, all the Chelsea players together. Now it's like one or two Chelsea players in a team with players from all different clubs and stuff like that. And in some teams, there's lots of different travel from different countries as well. And that is a bit of a worry. So I think next international break, I probably will try and hold my horses a bit. But ultimately, it's the same as every other season. There's a risk-reward to it. Just the risk is a little bit greater this time, but perhaps the reward is as well. So of course, off the back of that, the question has come up, what to do with Kevin De Bruyne? He seems to have come back injured. There's speculation in kind of different bits of media about whether he's going to play or not. I saw one thing, I don't know how legit it was, about him needing an injection. He didn't really want to take it. Obviously, he's played a lot of minutes. Maybe he just needs a rest. Hopefully, he doesn't play any more in the international break. And then Pep says he's good to go. The problem we're going to have is I don't think Pep's going to do that. I don't think he's going to give us a straight answer that he's available. And I've already seen people say, well, it's the same situation with Son. Mourinho didn't say Son was fine, then he was. But I don't think it is, because Son was subbed at half-time. Mourinho was never kind of really that convincing that he was because of that hamstring injury. There was talk about the fact that he just wanted to rest him, but then he didn't want to lose face because they drew the game. Whereas De Bruyne has come off in an international, and then it's kind of been said that, you know, it was through to... Now, it wasn't like a massive injury, but it was a precaution, right? So they are thinking about that. So that kind of makes me worried a little bit more than maybe I would have been with Son. But ultimately, we're not going to know. So what to do with him, right? If you don't own Son, I feel like that's probably one of the easiest transfers you're going to get all season. Not only do you get Son in with 4 great fixtures, you also get a huge chunk of change to spend. And I would have thought that De Bruyne would outscore Son over the next 4. But until Aguero and Jesus are back, and obviously if he's out, that's even worse. He's not going to score any points when he's not playing. I think Son's going to do better over the next 4. Over the next 6 to 8, maybe De Bruyne is better. So it depends how many transfers you want to use. But if you want to go for the points over the next 4 for Son, I do think that's a pretty easy transfer to make, to be honest. Outside of that, if it's just one game week, there probably is a big case to just keep him, especially if you think he's someone that's like a season keeper, and you're not going to want to spend transfers getting him out and then getting him back in. I did that, I think, last season or the season before. De Bruyne was injured for just 1 week, and I swapped into Son blanked, and then I had to get De Bruyne back, and it was just a bit of a mess. So if you are going to want... I don't think he's worth a 1 week transfer, right? If you're going to want him back straight away, don't bother getting rid of him. If you're comfortable going for the next 4 or so weeks with Son, then fair enough. Anyone else I wouldn't be as interested in. You could maybe switch to Sterling if you think you want to keep a Man City midfielder and you want one this week. But without Kevin De Bruyne, Aguero and Jesus, that would worry me going for Sterling, I think. And ultimately, there's not really any other midfielders that I'd want. If it was kind of game week 6, I'd maybe even think about doubling up on Liverpool midfielders. Having Mane and Salah for kind of game week 6 onwards could be pretty decent because they've got better fixtures, I think, than Man City. But ultimately, I think if it's one game, you can definitely make the case to hold him. If you really want to get rid, then Son just seems like such an obvious transfer because of his form. We're going to talk about him in a little bit as well when it comes to overperformance, but also the fixtures as well. So a bit of a no-brainer for me, but like you said, if you're someone you want to keep long-term, there's no reason to get rid right now. So this is a pretty easy question for me to answer, right? It's about benching big hitters. So one of the examples that was given to me was Liverpool versus Everton. Could be a tough game for both sides. Would you consider benching your premium kind of big hitters in this game? Or not even necessarily premium, but like Calvert-Lewin, Rodriguez, Luka Dean, Salah, Mane, defenders, whatever it might be. And the simple answer is no, I absolutely would not consider doing it unless I had a really, really good bench. And to be honest, most people won't have spent more than about 4.5, maybe 5 million on their bench options. And so for me, they are not worth playing ahead of Everton and Liverpool players. Now, that particular game, I don't know how it's going to go. I think I've said this before on yesterday's video, I believe, that Liverpool are going to want to bounce back. Everton are going to think it's the best time to play Liverpool, considering they just got battered 7-2. And obviously, Everton are in good form as well. They've won 4 out of 4. Imagine if they get a win against Liverpool. That would be massive. 5 wins out of 5. And they've won the derby as well. They're going to be right up for it. And Rodriguez, he's going to come back late from internationals, I'm sure if Ancelotti can get him playing, he will. So I wouldn't bench any of them. Like, yeah, okay, it could be a low-scoring game, a 1-1, your defenders don't get any clean sheet points, your attackers don't really get anything. But I just think it's way too risky to bench these kind of players because they can do something in any game, especially Salah or Mane, Trent, Robertson, Rodriguez, Calvert-Lewin's looking good right now. Who's betting against them to play like a 4.5 million defender or a 4.5 million midfielder? So it would take a very, I don't know, like weird scenario or situation where I would bench a premium player. I did it once a long time ago. Robin Van Persie, he was in the form of his life for Arsenal. He was playing Man United back when Man United could defend. And I benched him, and he only got 1 assist, and the bench player that I played instead actually did the same or better. But usually, there's just no point taking the risk. The chances of it working out are very slim, and ultimately, that's what this game is about, right? It's about playing the odds. And most of the time, your premium or your more expensive players are going to score more points than the cheaper ones. So how to deal with recency bias, and again, the kind of example that was given to me was Aston Villa, right? Everyone clambering to get on their players now after winning 7-2. And it is a tricky one, right? I think you have to look at recent form, okay? Because at the end of the day, there's only 38 game weeks, right? The ideal in terms of underlying stats and performance, stuff like that, is to get 38 game weeks worth of data and then put that into next season. But we know things change quickly, right? We've already had 4 game weeks. We can't wait like another 10 to 15 game weeks to completely change our opinions. So we have to use some recency bias, but we should also use maybe past season as well, right? So I've looked at Villa, for example, when it comes to defence. Last season, they were awful, right, over the whole season. From game week 1 to 29 in particular, really bad. They were conceding like more than 2 expected goals every single game. Since post-lockdown, that kind of halved, and I thought, okay, maybe that's just fighting for relegation. But again, first 3 games they've had this season, they've been pretty similar. I think over the last 12 games, they've conceded just over 1 expected goal, down from over 2 for the previous kind of 29 games before that in the league. So that shows me that that's not just recency bias, that there is some improvement there. Whether or not they can keep that up for the whole season, we don't know. So we shouldn't now say they're a great defensive team. We should say they have improved. They might be able to continue improvement. We don't know. And that's kind of the risk you take. Same with the attack, right? They've just put 7 against Liverpool. That is such an anomaly, right? That's not going to happen. When will Liverpool, again, concede 7 goals? It's probably going to be years before that happens again. Should we now think that Villa are the best attacking team in the league? Absolutely not. But we should be looking at their players, right? They've got good fixtures to come. That's one thing. We know Grealish did well last year. The one thing he didn't have was a striker that could finish. Ollie Watkins potentially looks like he's that man. Again, we don't know if he can keep this up just yet. It's only been 1 game where he scored a hat-trick. Barkley's come in, though. They didn't have him at the start of the season. Cash has come in. He was in a bit earlier, but he looks good as well. He's creating plenty of chances. A lot of the creativity from the fullbacks is coming from the right back instead of the left back. So he's come in. Barkley looked pretty good, but we don't know exactly where he's going to play. Maybe him playing further forward was a tactical decision against Liverpool. There's lots of things we don't know. So for me, recency bias, it depends how recent you're talking. Like if you're talking just a game or 2 and suddenly your whole opinion of a player or a team has changed, you probably want to temper that a little bit. But when it comes to defence in particular with Villa, I think they have looked better. Attack, there's reasons why I could say it's going to continue, but I wouldn't be 100% sure. I think they've got Leicester and Leeds in the next couple of games. I'd be happy just to see what happens there. And if they look like the real deal, right, they've got a great run of fixtures all the way over Christmas. And like I said, Jack Grealish created plenty of chances last year, but never had a striker that could finish. And I think Villa, in terms of where they've strengthened over the summer break, one of the best transfer windows, to be honest. They've kind of upgraded their keeper. They've got a new right back. Barkley's come in. I think Barkley gets a lot of stick, but I think for the price they paid and the price he's in FPL, especially if he's on penalties, he could be a good option. So you got to be careful with recency bias. You got to kind of look at, okay, what's happened versus what happened last season. Do I expect that to continue? What has made that happen? And kind of just go from there. So for me, for Villa, not necessarily massively jumping on their attack just yet, but I do think the defence has improved. So I expect we're probably going to get Liverpool defensive double up questions every single week until Alisson is back. So unless something major changes, this is going to be the last week that I talk about it. And I think it just depends on what you've already got, right? If I was wildcarding right now, would I have a defensive double up? Probably not. I think there's a lot of players that I would want in attack. Double up in defence would stop that. I know this whole narrative, and to be fair, it's not really a narrative because it is probably going to happen. They're going to tick over to 180 to 200 points over the course of the season. That's probably going to happen, but you've got to take into account what a cheaper defender might get you plus the money spent further up the pitch. So for me right now, I probably wouldn't go for the defensive double up because of Adrian. and also because ultimately I just want to spend a little bit more money in my attack. If I had double defense already, and I didn't have a wildcard, I wasn't looking to use it, I'd probably just keep it. I can't imagine there's many teams out there where they haven't got a bigger priority transfer than what taking out a Liverpool defender who could go and get you points in any given game week. If you have got a spare transfer, or if you want to use that to fund another move, then yeah, potentially go for it. But I wouldn't be writing off Liverpool defence just yet. When it comes to, they are one of the best defences in the league, and we know their fullbacks are two of the best attacking, they are the two best attacking defenders in the league, right? So for me, it's simple. I've got one, I'm keeping. If I had two, I'd keep unless I had a luxury transfer. If I was on wildcard, I still probably have one. Or I'd want to know my route back to get one or even two potentially further down the line. It's all well and good saying, well, I'll just get them. But before now, when Alisson is back, there's going to be other transfers to make, and you'll find it's actually quite difficult to get 2 free transfers just to fund a double up, who could also perform well before Alisson's even back. So I wouldn't panic too much. I don't think they're, the priority to get rid of, but potentially if you're on a wild card, you could think about it. Okay, let's talk about whether you should jump on players early or not. And I think there's a lot to kind of discuss here. We talked about it on the Scoutcast last night, right? And I think Joe made a really good point about people always want to be or claim to be the first person that was on a player, right? Before anyone else. Even though there's 7 million managers, probably 4 or 5 million are currently active right now. They're all thinking about these players, right? Pulisic, for example, all I've seen so far, and I include myself in this as well, I've talked about him quite a bit, 8.5 million, bargain. Now he's 8.4 million. He's going to be a bargain when he's back. He's 8.3. You're not going to get much better value for that when he's back fit. Everybody is thinking about Pulisic. You are not the only one. Same with Antonio. Antonio looks great. Fixtures are bad. Game week 8, everyone's going to look to bring him in. You will not be the first person to jump on them. And I do think there is a thing about jumping on too early. For me, right, jumping on a player early means getting them in. I think it does for everyone, right? Getting them in before they get FPL points. That doesn't mean you have to get them in straight away after an injury. That'd be more to the point like Pulisic's just played 2 or 3 games. He's got no FPL points. So some people won't look at buying him until he's actually scored. Some people, and this is what I would probably do as well, would say, wow, he's had 15 shots in the box in those 3 games. His expected goals was 2, but yet he scored nothing. There is a goal coming. That is jumping on early for me. It's getting on them before they've actually scored the points. But you still want to see good performances from them. Talking about some players that have come up, Pulisic, Aguero, Ziyech, Bale, there's fitness concerns. Some of them have been out for a while with injury. Aguero we've not even seen play yet. I cannot believe people are thinking about jumping on him. The thing with Aguero is, even if he performs well in that first game and you don't own him, everyone's going to think, well, every FPL manager is going to jump on them. But they won't. People will still worry about rotation, especially if Jesus is back at the same time. And there won't be a huge amount of clamour to go on Aguero. He'd have to go for like 2 or 3 games of doing really well, and then the majority of people will jump on. So you've already got a few games ahead of everyone else. Pulisic has just played, a few minutes in the last game week in game week 4? Absolutely no guarantee after being out for so long with a hamstring injury that he's going to be back for game week 5 for 80 to 90 minutes. There's just no guarantee of that. Even if he plays, it could be limited minutes. And then he's got Man United away. So if he doesn't perform against Southampton, you've suddenly got a player in with limited minutes who's got Man United away. And I know what everyone's going to be saying at the screen in the comments below. Man United are an easy team to play. And you're right. They have been absolutely awful. The worst team in the league, given what they should be able to do. They have been the worst team in the league for the first 3 games. But at some point, you'd hope they would turn that around and try and give Chelsea a game. They could make it difficult. Pulisic could absolutely run Wan-Bissaka ragged, who knows? But they could also make that game really tough. And so if he doesn't perform against Southampton, you then got that Man United game. For me, I'd rather see how he performs. Whether he scores or not, who cares? Let's see what his performance is like and then maybe get on after the Man United game. Same with Ziyech. He's played a few international minutes, but then he didn't play the next game. So let's see if he plays next for Chelsea. And then also Gareth Bale. Like, I get the idea behind Bale, right? He was so good last time he was in the league. We're hoping that happens again. But who knows if he's going to be the best option or Son's going to be the best option. Who knows when he's going to be like playing 80 to 90 minutes for a couple of game weeks. Like, he looked good in that training video, but that doesn't mean a huge amount. So no issues whatsoever if people want to jump on players early. But I do think there's a difference between jumping on too early, i.e. just back from an injury, we're not even sure if they're going to play, which I made the mistake of with Pulisic early on in the season, versus, okay, that player's performed well. They've not yet scored FPL points, but I think they will over the coming weeks. I'm going to jump on before everyone cottons onto it. So big difference. I think it is risky to go for those four players that I mentioned this week. Lots of people ask me about Brewster. There is a lot of hype about a player I don't think has ever scored in the Premier League yet, going to one of the worst attacking teams in the league in Sheffield United. Look, maybe he'll become this player we can play week in, week out. 4.5 million. He might go up to 4.6 or 4.7 quite quickly. We can play him week in, week out and have lots of budget to spend on the other kind of 6 attackers. Maybe that will happen. Or maybe he'll play for Sheffield United. I don't know if his minutes will be limited because they have got so many other strikers on the book, but you don't pay that kind of money as Sheffield United and not want to play him week in, week out. And they've obviously spotted some potential there, but there is worries about rotation there. We just don't know yet. He's got Fulham at home, which looks great. The fixtures after that are rubbish, by the way, so he's going to have to be as good as everyone thinks he is to actually get some goals. So for me, the hype is a little bit... It's unwarranted if you think he's a player that you can play week in, week out into your team right now. Maybe he will be. We saw it with Harry Kane. He was priced at 4.5 million at Spurs, burst into the team and was great value. We've seen it with Mahrez, Vardy in the past as well. But ultimately, for me, he's a bench fodder option, right? If you've got, say, a De Bruyne this week, and you want to bring in Brewster as a bench option for the next few weeks, but you can play him against Fulham this week, I don't think there's a huge amount wrong with that. But most of the time, he's going to be on your bench because we just don't know if he's going to play. And even if he does, he's playing for Sheffield United, and they've got bad fixtures coming up as well. So he's a bench option for me and nothing more than that. I'm playing 3-4-3. Would I get Brewster in if I was playing 3-5-2? Absolutely. He's the only potential playing 4.5 million forward. But he's not, I don't think he's good enough for me to switch tactics, right? There's so many forwards right now that I want. Like, I've got Morpay, I've got Jimenez, and I've got Calvert-Lewin. I'm going to want Antonio soon. What if Ollie Watkins keeps this form up, etc., etc. Callum Wilson's another option too. There's lots of cheap strikers to then put money into midfield, which is kind of what I'm doing right now. You could just have 2 of those cheap strikers and have Brewster and have 5 good midfielders. Again, nothing wrong with that. But if you're on a 3-4-3, I don't think there's a massive rush to get Brewster in to upgrade your midfield, unless that's part of your long-term strategy. So the hype is unreal for this guy. I hope he does well because having a 4.5 million playing player which you can rely on for points is incredible. But I think a lot of people have seen that Fulham game and have got a bit giddy, not realising the fixtures after are rubbish. And we don't even know how long he's going to play. So I wanted to end on overperformance because I've mentioned it quite a lot. And I think when I say that word, or when anyone says that word, everyone listening takes that as a negative. That player's overperforming, that means they're not a good option. But I don't think it's the case, right? So Calvert-Lewin, for example, has scored, I think, 6 goals in the first 4 game weeks. Is he going to score 6 in the next 4? No. He's probably overperformed for the amount of chances he's got. But that doesn't mean he's a bad option. He's still cheap. He's playing an Everton team that looks good. They've got a great manager. The fixtures are pretty decent after Liverpool. He is getting chances, so he is going to convert some of them. But he's probably not going to convert them at the same rate he is now. Son, for example, has scored 6 goals from 1.81 expected goals, right? So usually you would expect from the average player, and I appreciate he's not the average player, but he's not some, like, I don't know, better than Messi player that's going to finish way more often than anyone else, right? He's a better than average player, but it still doesn't mean he should have scored 6 goals from 1.81 expected goals. Usually you'd expect about 2 goals from that, right? That's not to say he doesn't deserve his points. That's not to say that over the next 4 weeks of the great fixtures, he won't continue to score great points. But he's had, I think, 7 attacking returns in the first 4 games, 6 goals, 1 assist. That's not going to continue for the next 4, even with how good their fixtures are. I would bet money he doesn't get 7 attacking returns over the next 4 games. Maybe I'll be made to look an idiot for that. But it's going to be difficult for him, right? He's had a few good games where he's got kind of 4 goals against Southampton. He's got a few goals against Man United as well. There's reasons that's happened, but it doesn't mean that Spurs have played badly and they've got lucky. They've played well. They've probably been a bit lucky to score as many as they have. But again, next 4 fixtures are great. He always gets points when he plays. He's a great option, but he has overperformed. Same with Harry Kane. 6 assists already from 0.95 expected assists. So usually with the amount of chances he's created, or with the quality of the chances he's created, you'd expect to get 1 assist. He has 6. He cannot probably keep that up, right? But again, still a good option. I think he's looking back to some of his best that he has in kind of the last few years. He's on penalties. Like Son, he's got 4 great fixtures. There's nothing really to worry about if you wanted to bring him in, if he fits into your structure, etc. But he has overperformed. So the point I'm trying to make is, overperformance doesn't make a player bad, but you have to temper your expectations. If you're getting Kane and think he's going to get 9 returns in the next 4, absolutely never going to happen. I'm just going to say it there, not going to happen. And also, there's some players where overperformance is a bad thing, right? Bamford, for example, he has overperformed, and I don't think he's going to keep it up. Maybe I'll be wrong about that. I know a lot of people like to lynch me in the comments when I say that about Bamford, and he is cheaper, so maybe it doesn't matter as much, but he's someone that's overperformed and I'm not sure he's going to be able to keep up for a few reasons, right? He might lose his place to Rodrigo at some point. Last year he missed a lot of big chances, right? He's put some of them away this year, but is that going to continue? I don't think it necessarily is. So perhaps he's overperformed and he can't continue it. But it doesn't necessarily mean he's a bad option, like lots of people will tell me in the comments below. So if you hear me mention that word, I usually do try and explain whether I think it's going to continue or not. And I do think Calvert-Lewin, Son and Kane have all overperformed. But you know what? I think they're all good options for the future. And there's no reason not to bring them in. That's it for this one. If you want to check out Manscape, go to manscape.com and use the code LTFPL for 20% off. A link to that is in the description below. Do hit that like button if you've enjoyed this preview video. Like I said, the captaincy stuff will be in a separate video over the next couple of days. And hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Let's try and hit 125k by the end of the season. It's a big ask, but I know we can do it if you all hit that button if you haven't already. And a big shout out to all the Patreons at patreon.com/letstalkfpl. There's a link to that in the description. Thanks to everyone that's signed up so far. Much appreciated as always, including Ivan I that has signed up since the last video. So if you want to check that out, there's WhatsApp, Slack access, extra content, as well as all my videos converted to podcast. The link for that is also in the description below. Otherwise, I'll catch you soon for another video. Captaincy as always. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Check out manscape.com and I'll catch you again soon for another video.